In today's episode of the Platform Presents podcast, I'm with Danna, and she's heading over from Treasury Prime. And it's a very interesting product in the fintech space, looking at, how do you bring fintech innovation and banks that are forward thinking together. And today we're going to be learning, all about Treasury Prime, what they're doing, who they're serving, but also how Danna is thinking about growth for the company. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lucas. Nice to be
Awesome.
here.
Yeah, give us that 360 overview. What is Treasury Prime all about?
Sure. Treasury Prime is a banking as a service company that connects banks and fintechs so that companies can quickly and easily embed financial services into their applications. I realize that there are probably a lot of people who don't know what this looks like. And so maybe I can provide an example of what that is, especially if you don't come from a fintech background or industry. The example I use is Chime, right? It's this new fintech that's coming into the market. And the story is that they're taking clients from traditional banks, but Chime isn't actually a bank. They actually recently got in trouble for saying that they are a bank. So they actually have to say they are not a bank. And this is like really fundamentally an incorrect narrative where these new sort of, modern banks or like applications like Chime are taking, customers away from banks. The story is actually that most of these banks like Chime and other types of fintechs absolutely cannot get to market if they don't have a chartered bank partner on the back end that's helping them create all of their banking services like opening checking accounts, debit cards, savings accounts. But what we've seen happen is in the U.S. deposit market, banks used to have 100% control of all of that space. And that's not the case anymore. So for banks to be able to grow, they need to increase deposits, which is essentially the number one goal for a lot of banks, right? Increase deposits, grow revenue. So banks now are in a position where they need to figure out other ways to do this. And one of the easiest ways is to say, hey, why don't we go find some fintech companies that have them and that are building that and partner with them and have them use our infrastructure and we'll get the benefit of the deposits. And the fintech goes out and does all of the awesome marketing to attract all these new clients for us, right? The problem is that a lot of these bank systems are like a million years old. And so if you are actually trying to build a product on a banking infrastructure core, you're not going to have a good time because it's as fun as pulling out your fingernails. So what does Treasury Prime do? We connect these banks. We have built and wrapped their cores, these banking cores with our APIs so that it's easy as a fintech to just plug and play. And so they don't actually have to build directly into the banking core systems themselves. And so they just are able to connect and get up and running and get to market quickly. And it's simple, it's easy to use, it's modern technology. And so, on the other end of that, the brilliant thing about our business and our sales team is they also act as an arm for our bank partners, right? They're going out finding businesses for the bank partners as well. So it's a really interesting business model. And as my CEO says all the time, we have to win all the fintechs and we have to win all the banks to make sure everybody is successful. We're marketing to three completely different audiences, to really fintechs and banks. And they don't really speak the same language, right? And yet we're selling the same product. So we really, really need to know our audience really well.
And can you tell us a little bit sort of on the bank side, like who would be the individuals that are actually, interested in working with Treasury Prime? And on the flip side, within the fintechs, is that, potentially like a product manager or who's reaching out? Maybe tell us a little about the individuals who are actually, interacting with Treasury Prime.
A lot of these banks are going to be, your local community chartered banks. And so most of the time they're either, mom and pop or family owned. I shouldn't say mom and pop, but they're family owned businesses that have been established for a long time. They're not competing with the Chases and the Capital Ones and the Wells Fargos. We're not going after those bigger sort of commercial banks. We're going after these sort of community chartered banks because we know that they're the ones that are going to have the most it's going to impact their business the most in terms of increasing their deposits. So in terms of who it is that we target at these banks, a lot of times it's either the CEO or potentially a VP of innovation, or somebody that's in charge of increasing deposit revenue for the business. But there's a lot of buyers that are involved in that, because these banks typically, a lot of buyers, slow sales cycle, but also a relatively large panel of people that need to buy into Treasury Prime.
No, I could
On the
see.
fintech side, yeah.
Correct.
On the on the fintech side, a lot of these fintechs are starting up and they're brand new. And so, we have to catch them really early as they're building their products. And so it's usually, the first 5 to 10 people that are at the company, and the company is probably about 5 to 10 people big. You've got the founders, you've got the head of engineering or VP of engineering, you have the VP of, technology, innovation. Those are typically the folks that we target on the fintech side.
And what would you say, those two sides, how do they learn about Treasury Prime? Sort of what is the journey that they're going through? In other words, what are the key client acquisition channels that you guys are leveraging?
I love this question because the answer is so wildly different, right? On the banking side, you've got this antiquated business where nothing has changed since the 1950s, since essentially they built the banking core system in the United States. That cohort of our audience, they are really big on networking. And I don't even think people realize how small the finance world really is. Everybody knows everybody. And they really, really are dependent on that network and that relationship building, and getting information from their colleagues, their trusted colleagues, and looking at sort of traditional media outlets like American Banker, and these sort of events that are really geared towards the banking audience, such as like Money 2020. It's one of the largest conferences in the US for finance. Sort of these more traditional sort of outlets, they're not as big on, getting cold called by random people, because again, that relationship, that networking, it's not established, so they don't respond as well to it. And then on the fintech side, we have to get really creative and clever, because a lot of times these fintechs are operating in stealth mode. You don't even know that they exist, because they don't even have a product quite yet. And they don't necessarily have they don't even have a domain name. They're still operating out of johnsmith3543@gmail.com. And how do you even know where they are? So that has also been one of these opportunities that we've been really digging into this past year, to figure out where can we find these folks. And the fintechs, interestingly, they're working with its accelerators. They are building their first company for so for them, there's this opportunity for us to create a lot of educational material to help guide them through building their product, and help guide them through learning about the space, because it is so, in the grand scheme of things, it's very new and constantly evolving. And so we have to make sure that we're that sort of place that they can come to when they have questions on how to build a product, how to get to market quickly. What is card issuing? What is ACH? What are all these terms that maybe are going to be relevant as I build my product, but I don't necessarily know how it works. So
what role, with these very different, let's call them personas, with this very different personas learning about Treasury Prime, what is the role of the website? How do you think about the website for client acquisition?
Our website, and I've been reiterating this a lot the last few weeks, because we're thinking about our strategy for 2022 and how we incorporate sort of different channels, but our website is the largest driver for our pipeline. It is our North Star, right? All of our content is housed there. All of our main way of sales getting into contact with our leads, and our leads getting in contact with our sales team, is on our website. It is where we guide and direct a lot of our marketing spend and resources to, because that's our front door. So yeah.
I see. Very cool. And now, every marketer that we have on the show is typically very critical. Maybe we can stick a second on the website, very critical about their website. Maybe you can give me a glimpse, an insight into, what do you think is sort of the strength of the current page, versus where do you also see, room for improvement on the flip side?
I will certainly tell you what we have done in the last, our focus in the last 6 to 8 months, at least for myself, from a demand gen perspective, has been to focus on organic growth and focus on SEO to drive more people to our website. And what does that look like? We're thinking about how we position our content. We're thinking about the messaging. We're thinking about what is going to be valuable so that it's not just, hey, come to our website so we can sell you. It's how do I provide value to you, even if you don't plan to be a customer of ours, so that we create this sort of brand, affinity for Treasury Prime, even if they don't become a prospect of ours. So I think right now in the last 6 months and continuing on moving forward, creating more content that's valuable and in sort of different channels and different sort of vehicles, right? We've done a lot of written content. I think the next thing that we're going to be focused on our website is creating more videos to help our audience understand what it is that we do in a format that suits them.
I think very cool. In your journey as a marketer, I mean, we spoke a bit about the page here right now, the different elements that you're working on. What have you, maybe, is there something that you've learned, any sort of methods, tools, technologies, approaches, in order to figure out why people potentially don't convert on the website and how to go about that? Something that you picked up in your journey?
I appreciate this question because I think right now we're actually in the midst of really digging into that. Up until now, we have been really driving everybody to contact us and fill out the form. And that's really been the only way for people to engage with us. That's it. Raising the hand. I think there's a few problems with this. One being that everybody is going to raise their hand, even if they're not qualified. And, that becomes a problem for your marketing database. And that also becomes a problem for your sales team. So how do you make sure that the folks that are contacting you are actually qualified? And then second to that, give your audience the ability to have a conversation with you on your website and engage with you in different ways without actually feeling like they need to speak to a sales team. What opportunities are you creating for your users and your audience to interact with you without getting scared, like, I just don't want to talk to sales, so how are you inviting them to have a conversation? Is it downloading really valuable webinar, on-demand webinars? Is it engaging in, the white paper? Is it, looking at joining more webinars that might be valuable to you? So creating these sort of touch points of opportunities for your users to engage with your website without having to feel threatened that they're going to be sent over to sales. I think is sort of what I've learned and what we're focused on right now.
Interesting. I want to switch gears slightly. We spoke about sort of what you guys are doing, who you're serving. We talked a little bit how you're thinking about growth. Now I would like to get to know you a little bit better as a human, as a person, as a marketer. The first question I would have is, so basically, I want to throw a couple of rapid fire questions at you. Are you up for this?
Absolutely. Love rapid fire questions.
There you go. There was no other choice, really, now. But okay, so first one, what's the last book you read?
I feel like it's really based on whether or not I have the capacity to read something that's kind of industry focused, or whether maybe work is crazy right now and I want to kind of have a release and I read something that's more focused on, fiction and getting myself sort of an opportunity to get away. So there's a few different books I'm reading focused on sort of the industry. There's one that was recommended to me by one of my close friends. It is called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. I really like this. Being a demand gen person myself, I know that it's incredibly important for me to know a little bit about everything, especially being at a startup where, you're included in so many different things. You have to wear multiple hats. And I find that people who are usually in the startup space, they have a lot of range. And so I'm reading this book to kind of just understand more of what I can be doing to expand my personal and professional growth as somebody who is more of a generalist than a specialist.
Very cool. What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
The customer journey. Absolutely, the customer journey. Yeah, I think the reason why it's keeping me awake at night is because we're trying to figure out what that looks like, and we're trying to figure out, do we have the right tools in place to make sure that we can track this and apply attribution? Because when we're thinking about what our strategy should be for the future, we need to understand what our customers' journey looks like and how we market to them, and what's working and what's not. And so this has been keeping me up the last few weeks.
Very cool. And for the last question, I want to bring you back to the very first day you're joining Treasury Prime. What's the one advice you would give yourself?
If I were to start at Treasury Prime all over again, I would probably tell myself, do not be afraid to test and experiment. You can make the best assumptions, but until you actually test it, you're never going to know if it's going to work or resonate with your audience. Experiment with message, experiment with the image, test the buttons, always be willing to experiment so that you learn and you have data. And it's going to take time, experiment, iterations. You have to do all these things in order to deliver consistent, repeatable results. So start now, test now, and experiment now.
And I really appreciate you taking the time with us today to be a guest on Platform Presents. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Treasury Prime today, what's the one thing that they should remember?
About Treasury Prime, if you're ever interested in adding banking services to a product or an offering or an app, it's way bigger than just fintechs, right? If you think about DoorDash, would anyone consider them a fintech company? No, but do they have a whole payments thing going on? Yes. So to some degree, they are a fintech, and we're going to start seeing a lot more of these businesses offer bank accounts, payments, and cards. And it's going to really sort of shift businesses and how they grow their revenue, how they think about increasing their customer acquisition. And I think that these are, people are building these groundbreaking, innovative new companies on our platform, and we're powering the next generation of fintechs with embedded banking. So hopefully more to come, and more business growth and innovation to come from that.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Platform Presents.
Thank you.